We have a video from SidneyMar, and he's actually I guess by like subs and I guess views now, he is a bigger creator than me. What I wanted to take a look at is his newest video. Kuro Games is 2 steps ahead. Let me just subscribe to him in advance and like the video. I can imagine that this is gonna have some good stuff. And just from like the very first time stat that we're seeing over here, right? He's gonna be talking about some combat mechanics in the game and how when it comes to combat, Kuro Games is 2 steps ahead. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and see what SidneyMar is talking about and whether or not we agree with his takes.
Quick
Take it away.
swapping or quick swap teams have become quite popular in Wuthering Waves. It essentially involves swapping your characters during their attack animations to save some time by having 2 characters on field doing attacks simultaneously.
That's an interesting team to use for quick swap because this is just a very simple hypercarry team. But he's definitely right in that you can still quick swap in a lineup like this, and it is the most efficient way to actually play the team. So it's not just like quick swap and dual DPS. You can quick swap in hypercarry as well.
And you optimize this to build your Concerto energy for each character at roughly the same rate. We call this Concerto matching. It also makes gameplay.
Have you guys ever heard the term Concerto matching before? I don't think I've heard it before, but I'm down to use it. It seems like an interesting one. Maybe bro's pulling a bit of a Vars, making up some new turns, but at least this one makes sense instead of fucking backup dancer and combat engines. It's a lot better than that.
Play look insanely flashy and just one subjectively fun way to play the game. But have you ever wondered whether Kuro Games intended for this type of playstyle? Well, the first ever quick swap team answers that question. On the 23rd of July 2022, over 2 years ago, Kuro Games uploaded their first gameplay demo of Wuthering.
Gosh, this kind of looks like ass. I'm not gonna lie. Everything just looks like a lot more like claymation. It just looks like, it looks so much worse than what the game is. They made a lot of progress.
Waves, showcasing some of the combats they were developing at the time. The only character kits showcased in this video are both male and female Rover, Sanhua, and Yang Yang. Most of the gameplay looked pretty standard for what you would expect in a combat demo.
Yeah, honestly, this doesn't look that good. I mean, it's just so great. I am much happier with what we got on release. This just looks, I would just get depressed exploring the world. It's literally too great.
Just a good old look at the abilities and Solaris 3 back then. It wasn't until 1 minute and 18 seconds in the video, Kuro Games showcased the very first quick swap in Wuthering Waves history. A combination of Rover, Sanhua, and Yang Yang that would trademark the beginning of quick swapping in the game. But what you see here has more meaning than just quick swapping. This gameplay is from the first iteration of Wuthering Waves.
How did he do it again? Does he have a PhD in drip? I don't understand how he just looks. How does he look so good every time he's on camera? I don't understand. It doesn't matter what he's wearing. It doesn't matter what his hairstyle is. Bro is like a model turned developer. Every single time he shows up on camera, it's fucking ridiculous. I don't know how he does it.
With Concerto reactions. Each resonator of your team had their Concerto energy alongside their forte bar. When making attacks with your active resonator, you would fill up their Concerto energy the same as today. However, once their Concerto energy was filled, it began to deplete over time. At the same time, while it is depleting, your active character will have a symbol around them. That is the symbol you'll see around Rover during the showcase. When this symbol is present, switching to a character of a different element would trigger a Concerto reaction. The Rover switching to Sanhua triggered Ice Domain, which creates a stagnation field.
Interesting. Some could say that the removal of this mechanic was something that might have potentially taken away from some of the synergies in this game. I remember actually seeing this myself while doing research on WuWa, and it's interesting, right? But if it's only 40% for 3 seconds, that's one of the shortest debuffs in gacha gaming. You can't really do much with this, especially if it's only 3 fucking seconds long.
And reduces enemy glacier resistance. And Sanhua to Yang Yang triggered Ice Array, which creates the arrow field that sucks enemies in and deals damage to them. This showcased the maximum gameplay potential of Wuthering Waves back then.
Hey, that crownless is looking drippy. Yo, give me this. Give me this version of crownless. I like the crownless with the red cape.
You can trigger multiple reactions within 2 keystrokes. Kuro Games also quick swap from Sanhua to Yang Yang during Sanhua's intro skill, which is now animation locked today. So why did Kuro nerf this? Well, they didn't. Kuro is actually ahead of their time. Imagine using this old
Why does he keep showing us Dong? He needs to, like, I'm just trying to chill and relax the video. Bro needs to stop pulling up Dong in like 3 different outfits, okay? You need to chill with that.
system in today's Wuthering waves, and we reached, say, version 5.0. So we have this symbol that means a reaction can be made when Concerto energy is filled, which we will call an elemental aura. No matter what character releases in the future, the elemental aura triggers.
Maybe this is why they didn't put it in the game. Seems like you would have needed a fucking PhD to play this game properly. Holy shit. Okay. Oh, wow. This is a lot to fucking remember. Oh my gosh. That's quite a bit. Okay, obviously, right? Havoc plus anything else is like just resistance reduction. Spectral plus anything else is just time slow and resistance reduction. And then everything else is just like damage. So it's not the most complicated thing ever, honestly. Once you think about it, it's just there's a lot of different possibilities, and that could overwhelm players right off the rip.
Is these same reactions that can be triggered by characters released in version 1.0. Perhaps as time went on, these newer characters could build their elemental aura faster, but there will always be that set amount of time before the next time they can trigger a reaction. We'll call this time between reactions their internal cooldown. So as time went on, no matter what characters release, the goal or purpose was the same as characters that released in version 1.0 to create one of the 15 predefined reactions.
If this system was still in the game, instead of being centered around character kits, it would now be centered around triggering as many of these reactions as possible. And so that would kind of mean that more of the strength is just tied into how fast you're filling the Concerto bar versus how fast, you know, you're actually like playing the character's kit, going through rotations and dealing damage. So fundamentally, it's like a different focus for the game, and these were entirely replaced by outro skills. A lot more like Genshin and a lot less like the WuWa of now.
This creates problems for longevity of a game, because eventually Kuro would have to start selling new mechanics on characters to create
Phlogiston. When this character is in Renacita, they will be able to use Phlogiston to remain in their taste spirit state. Use taste spirit attacks to fight new enemies through version 5.
variation and not feel repetitive. So if you want to then
Goofy
experience
as hell.
these mechanics, you need to spend on characters with these mechanics rather than who you want. And if enemies require these mechanics to be stunned, then essentially you're fighting mechanics, not fighting an enemy. Kuro Games is 2 steps or
Fighting mechanics instead of fighting an enemy. Oh boy, don't let the Hyperbloom players hear that, buddy. Don't let the Hyperbloom players hear that. All you're doing is you're fighting the blooms that you created off the enemies.
years ahead of their time, because they have introduced a system that eliminates this issue. Instead of reactions being the end goal for characters, we now have outro skills that do any mechanic Kuro wants to create or think of.
These are so much better. Outro skills are actually so good. You have so many different kinds that you have, like ones that deal damage, ones that buff. You can make them anything you want in the character's kit, and it gives them infinite potential.
If you want a character to effectively boost your damage, you don't need to make a specific reaction. You can use one character that does the job in combination with any
Bro had the perfect opportunity to echo cancel his monkey, and he just didn't do it.
one character that does the job in combination with any character of any element. For example, Sanhua can be used with any character of any element to boost their basic attack damage. You don't need to use her with a Spectre character just to boost your damage. Or let's say you want to freeze an enemy. There was a reaction that required one arrow and one glacier character, which means that only certain party members could play around this reaction.
He brings up an incredible point. When you look at this dynamic over here, this would essentially force you to put a Havoc character on each team. Because if you didn't put a Havoc character on each team, you were just griefing. Because a reduction to the elemental resistance or the attribute resistance of a character or of a boss or an enemy, that would basically be mandatory to deal any fucking damage in this game. You would basically be forced to have a Havoc character on every single team. And that to me doesn't seem like a lot of fun. And now it's about, okay, is the new character Havoc? All right, they're now like the best buffer in the game. And it's so restrictive and so ridiculous that I can see why they changed it, and I can see why it wouldn't be fun to play. Because look at this. You just read any of these buffs. If you're not using them, you're just griefing. You're quite literally just griefing if you don't use any of these.
Certain party members could play around this reaction. In today's intro-outro system, Kuro can just add this feature to any character of any element. For example, Spectre Rover's outro skill freezes enemies by stopping time. Now this means you don't need a Glacio and Aero character, you can use a Spectre character that fits in any team comp.
It introduces another type of a restriction though, frankly, because now Spectral Rover is actually the only character in the game, aside from Zhang Liao during his liberation, that can actually stop time. or do that slowdown. And what that means is that more of these mechanics are now tied to the characters instead of being tied to the system. But that also means, right, you're gonna have to pull the new character to actually access the new system. And that can have negative impacts of its own, right? Where you can't really access some of these features that you might like unless you pull a new character. But hey, that's a way to sell new characters as well. And I see someone saying that the one cost zigzag can do it, but guys, nobody's using a one cost echo skill. Let's be real here. Nobody's using them.
Perhaps in the future, Kuro releases a Glacier character that does this with their outro skill. Now you can use this Glacier character with any elements in the game and still get that freeze effect. Essentially, instead of being time gated and selling different mechanics that all have the same endpoint of applying an elemental aura, Kuro Games have designed a system that breaks a repetitive cycle to avoid the end goal mechanic of reactions. And this allows players to use any combination of characters they want. Now the question is, what system do you prefer?
This gives each individual character a lot more potential and a lot more variability in terms of like, I have this one Havoc character, I can now buff all 5 of the other attributes with this one character, versus now have this one character that can only do like one type of buff. So that's kind of like an interesting differentiation here, right? This basically means you can do whatever you want with the game. It has a lot of upward potential, but this gives a lot more potential to the existing roster, and it lets one character do a lot of different things. There are obviously trade-offs to both, but I think this one is better for the longevity of the game. But frankly, it could feel a little bit restrictive from the idea, right, that you can't necessarily give a character multiple roles. I know he mentioned something about echo skills as well, providing some of that additional utility, but it's also like there are just some echo skills which are frankly so much better than others that I hope that the power creeping happens on the echo side, where they give buffs but then also have like the secondary effect. And that to me, especially considering echoes are like quote unquote free to play in that you can just grind them until you get good substats and then use them, that's where I think a lot of the additional variation comes in. Make echo skills that are worth using for their buffs, but then also have like that CC or that additional ability. Power creeping echoes, nobody gives a shit about that. Or if you do give a shit about that, I don't think you should, because you can farm them without paying anything. And it makes it more of like it's a very free to play friendly thing to make echo skill power creep.
The system with the end goal, or the system that starts at the same point and has an unending list of possibilities. For example, if Kuro wants a fusion character that can freeze enemies, they can make it. They are no longer restricted by an elemental reaction.
One fantastic example of this, ladies and gentlemen, is Shorekeeper's grouping. Shorekeeper has built-in grouping on her kit, versus if you had the older system, right, you would have to have an arrow character on the team to do any grouping at all. But because of the new system and the way they design kits, Shorekeeper just has built-in grouping. It's not as big, obviously, as other characters, but it's there.
That is all for this video. I will see you in the next video.
Same with Jinsei. She also has grouping on some of her attacks. It's kind of bad. I don't like Jinsei's grouping at all. But, you know, it works for some people. Awesome video, SidneyMar. I don't think this was necessarily like a big sort of like innovative discovery within the game, but a great history lesson, right, on the path that these developers have taken. I can see why Dong appeared on my screen so many times. Clearly, he's the mastermind behind all of this, and they've created a game with a ton of potential and a ton of utility and infinite possibilities for what's ahead. I'd love the echo point, and I'm hoping to see in Renacita in 2.0 power creep on the echo side. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, please, give SidneyMar your sub, give him some likes. Awesome video, awesome content. He's kind of like the WuWa historian, and it's always a joy to see what he's going to come up with next. Let me know what you think about it in the comment section below, and have a good one, everybody. Peace out.